In this video, we'll conclude our gorging of Spanish nouns with the various types of nouns that we find upstairs in Joel's house. Time-related nouns are in the ballroom, location nouns are in the library, and parts or aspects of things are in Joel's bedroom, and, as we'll discover, his bathroom. Let's start with the ballroom, which is the first room we encounter upstairs. On the left side of the ballroom, we find a man lying down and sleeping on the floor. According to Joel, a new man lies down here once a week, and each man wakes up and leaves after 7 days, just to be replaced by a new man. This represents the word semana, with a stress on man, which means week. This man is lying down in the foreground, and of course we have our vez further back. Between these two, Joel has put up some Easter decorations, including chocolate bunnies and colored eggs. Joel's biggest party every year is held at Easter. He also leaves some of the decorations up year-round because it's too much hassle to change them every time. Although Joel holds informal gatherings all the time, he always looks forward to his big Easter party, and so for him, each party is just a reflection of Easter. His word for party is fiesta, which sounds a little bit like Easter in the stress. Esta, fiesta. On the right side of the room, we see Joel's clock. The minute hand of this clock is shaped like a slimy newt. Instead of ticking steadily like most clocks, this newt moves all of a sudden every minute, making a slippy squeaking sound as it does. Joel's word for minute is minuto, with the stress on newt. Joel loves measuring time in minutes, hours, days, and weeks, which are all standard lengths. However, he thinks that months are stupid. They aren't proper measurements of time because they're of differing lengths. Some months are 31 days long and others are only 29 or 28 days. What a mess! How is that useful for measuring time? To reflect this, Joel keeps a homemade calendar on which he's scribbled out every single page because he thinks months are a mess in terms of tracking time. And his word for month is mes. As an example, a month ago would be hace un mes, although if you think about it, that's always a rough estimation of how much time has passed. In front of the messy calendar at the back of the room, but behind the temple, Joel has a relic from a former life, a sad small piece of broken down furniture slumping in the corner. This represents the word pasado, which means past, but it has the stressed syllable sad, pasado. This can be used as a noun in many ways. For example, in that year would be en ese año, but in the past would be en el pasado. One more word. A piece of grain from the baker's stand has found its way to the ballroom here, sitting on top of one of the mints on the floor. This grain used to ring loudly like the ones in the plaza, but this one has lost that ability and sits there uselessly. When entonces, represented by this, is used as a noun, it refers to a specific period of time, usually in the past. For example, you can say, at that time, by saying, en ese entonces. Let's go over to the library. Joel has only been to school one day in his entire life, and he hated it. Right after going to school, he went home and wrote a book that talks about what a horrible place school is. The entire book is shaped like a face that's crying loudly, or wailing, as Joel would say. In fact, whenever Joel thinks about the idea of going to school, he almost wants to wail. His word for school is escuela, and this is located inside the casa shelf, so it's on the left side of the room. Not many people have bought Joel's book, but he proudly displays it. Now, on top of this book is a spot of fluffy mud arranged in a circle. During Joel's only day at school, he was taught that planet Earth is made of mud and air. The students were required to create a model by shaping the fluffy mud into a circle. Joel was embarrassed when his classmates took his own circle of mud and put it on Joel's head, saying, "Look at Joel, he's wearing a tiara." Joel shudders when he remembers that day, and he has put this tiara, made of earth, on top of his book about school, so that he can remember how awful it was. Joel's word for earth is tierra, which sounds a little bit like tiara. Now, as a quick note, remember that we have our word for the world on the right side, and that's el mundo. But la tierra represents the earth. These two words basically mean the same thing, although el mundo sometimes refers to the people in the world, and la tierra tends to refer to Earth as a planet and what it's made of, such as dirt or mud. Again, Joel keeps these two things on his casa shelf, but let's look down at the floor. Sometimes Joel builds cities out of Legos here in the library. He loves large cities because he thinks that they're powerful and wealthy. However, one sad day, his careless dad knocked over his Lego city. Joel was furious, and he considered suing his dad for destroying his creation. He was very proud of this city. "Sue Dad!" he shouted in anger. His word for city is actually ciudad. To the right of this, Joel has also created a much smaller town out of Legos, but it's modeled to look like the tiny town that Joel was raised in as a baby bee. But Joel hates small towns. He likes to pretend that this little town is in big trouble. A wave of water is about to wash over it, destroying the town. To enact this, Joel splashes water from a small cup on this incredibly small town, and then he laughs. "Ha ha ha ha! You silly small town! You'll never survive a wave of water!" His word for town is pueblo, the same word as we used for people, with a stress on wave. Pueblo. Now, ciudad is on the left, so it's la ciudad, but pueblo is on the right, el pueblo. Above the pueblo is a ladder that's used for accessing books on the top shelves when Joel doesn't feel like flying. The word is right next to the parte window, but this one is on the right instead of the left. Joel calls this ladder his lado. Now, the word lado is very much like the word parte, in that it's used to mean place right after an indefinite adjective, such as otro, cada, or muchos. Let's look at some examples. Another place could be otra parte, or it could be otro lado. Remember to think of parte and lado as really close to each other, but parte is on the left and lado is on the right. We can go to any place would be podemos ir a cualquier lado. She wasn't in any place would be no estaba en ningún lado. The tallest book that Joel owns on his enormous bookshelf on the right side is a book about hospitals. The book is so tall that it ends up taking up the height of 2 shelves. Joel imagines that hospitals must be tall too, and so his word for hospital is spelled exactly like the English word, but it sounds like this. Hospital. So we stress tal. A few misshapen pies are sitting on top of some of the books on a lower shelf. This is the geography section of Joel's library. The different countries are represented by different books. But Joel's pie crusts are made with yeast, and the yeast is causing the crusts to run down in front of the different countries, covering up their names in varying amounts. Joel refers to a country as a país. So the word país sounds kind of like pies, but it stresses the syllable that sounds like yeast. País. Meanwhile, there's some empty space on one of the shelves. This area of the shelf has some green bumps all over it. Joel doesn't know what these bumps are, so he doesn't put any books here for fear of infecting them with warts. Instead, he plays with some of his toys here, pretending that it's a little bedroom instead of a bookshelf. The word cuarto, with a stress on wart, is used to mean room or bedroom. Speaking of which, let's turn around and go into Joel's bedroom, which can be accessed through the library. Joel often crawls into his bedroom extremely tired from flying all day, especially since he has to go up his stairs to get into the bedroom. When he does so, all he cares about is getting into bed comfortably. The poco yen bills on the floor are sometimes nice for poking his feet and reminding him of his wealth, but when he's tired, he doesn't want to be poked. So he's left a pair of socks near his bed, providing something softer to step on. This pair of socks represents the word par, which means couple. Par and poco are used in similar ways to talk about small amounts of something. For example, Joel might have a little bit of money, un poco de dinero. Or he could have a couple of dollars, or un par de dólares. So this idiom, a couple of, translates directly to un par de. It represents a very small number, usually 2, or an estimated 2 or 3. For example, a couple of days ago would be hace un par de días. Remember that Joel's bed itself is used to represent parts of something. We've seen previously that the blanket on the left side of Joel's bed is divided into partes. But on the right side of the bed, it's punctuated with dots or points instead. Joel calls these points puntos. He doesn't like sleeping in the puntos, so he usually sleeps in the parte half of his bed. Between these is a dotted line down the middle, as if to divide the lanes of his bed. Joel calls this el medio, which means the middle. Note that this is masculine. Punto is also masculine, but parte on the left is feminine. Still, the right side of the bed is important, even though Joel doesn't sleep there. He has a small ladder on the right side of his bed for climbing in when he has no energy to fly. The word lado means side, although we've seen in the library that it also sometimes means place. There's also a nail at the end of Joel's bed. In fact, when Joel thinks of the end of something, he thinks about this nail. His word for end is final, so it's spelled just like the English word final, but the stress is on nal, like nail, final. For some reason, this nail is pinning a fish's fin to Joel's bedpost. The word fin, spelled exactly like fin, also means end, although it's used slightly differently in different idioms. For example, the idiom al final means in the end. Remember that Joel likes to use a to represent a specific point in time, so this literally means to the end or at the end. Al final. But the idiom en fin is often used to sum up or conclude a story. It's roughly equivalent to anyway or in a nutshell, and you might say this at the end of a long paragraph. For example, well, anyway, that's the story. Bueno, en fin, esa es la story. Now let's look at Joel's two nightstands, one on the left and one on the right. These represent aspects of something. Any person or object has many aspects. They could have a life, vida, a name, nombre, a type, tipo, and so on. Some more things that we're about to learn are they're likely to have a death, a form, a story or history, a number, and a position. These are all aspects of things. We're about to cover these words. On the left-hand nightstand, the vida lamp has emitted a large amount of steam. The steam is kind of strange. It clings together in a funny, vague shape, almost identifiable as the shape of a person, but not quite. Whenever Joel looks at this steam, he thinks of the word forma, which means form. This comes with an idiom. The idiom de todas formas, literally of all forms, is used to mean regardless or one way or another. You'll often use it after you've described a situation, but now you're summing up with the important part. For example, one way or another, I have her. De todas formas, la tengo. Leaning against the lantern is a book that Joel sometimes likes to read as a bedtime story when he's not too tired already. This book is simply the story of Joel's life, or his history. So he calls this his bedtime history. Joel's word for story or history is historia. This word is spelled kind of like the English word history, but the stress is on story, so it's halfway in between. Historia. Beneath the lantern and the book is a t-shirt. This is a shirt that Joel would never ever want to wear because it reminds him of his mortality. It has a picture of a skull on the front, which is a symbol of death to Joel. Every time Joel throws the shirt out, it keeps appearing again right here under the vida lamp and the historia storybook. Sometimes when Joel is half asleep, he thinks he can hear the skull quietly saying, "Wear me, wear me." And the skull glows slightly at night, just like the lamp does, so it's always present. Joel can't get rid of it. They seem to be bound to each other in a mysterious way. Joel has concluded that he can't get rid of the shirt without also getting rid of the lamp. Since Joel likes his life, vida, he doesn't want to get rid of the lamp, and he supposes that he's just stuck with the thing under it as well. The word muerte, which stresses where, muerte, means death. In Joel's world, you can't have life, vida, without also having death, muerte. On the nightstand to the right side of the bed, the teapot that the gnome is holding is Joel's alarm clock. Every morning it brews a different type of tea, or tipo of tea, which is exciting to Joel. But he also likes to look at the clock on the side of the teapot. The numbers on this teapot alarm clock are Roman numerals, and whenever Joel thinks of the word number, he pronounces it as numero. Meanwhile, remember that the gnome itself doesn't have a name or nombre. Nevertheless, it does have an identity. The gnome is very proud to be Joel's teapot holder because previously he was just the wastebasket holder. He didn't like his previous position, but his current position suits him very well. Another smaller gnome, meanwhile, now has the lower position of holding the wastebasket underneath this nightstand. Joel's word for position is puesto, which stresses waist. Puesto. Let's practice switching out these aspect nouns like number, type, life, death, story, and position. To say the position has more than that, you would say el puesto tiene más que eso. The number is greater than that would be el número es mayor que eso. Going over to the left-hand nightstand, the story is better than that would be la historia es mejor que eso. Death is better than that would be la muerte es mejor que eso. The form is something else would be la forma es algo más. Adjacent to Joel's bedroom is the bathroom, where we store words for body parts. On the left side of the room, Joel has his toilet and his sink. The base of Joel's toilet is very strange. It's shaped like a human head. Joel's word for head is cabeza, with a stress on base. Now, the mirror above Joel's sink is not as clear and clean as you might expect. There's a reason for this. As you know, Joel loves his blue car. He thinks it's the prettiest thing that he owns, and consequently, he uses it as the standard by which beauty is measured. But Joel is also a bit of a narcissist. When he looks at his own face in the mirror, he likes to think that it looks beautiful. To represent this, he always draws an outline of his blue car over his face in the mirror to make his face's reflection look more beautiful. There's now a permanent blue car outline on his mirror. The word cara means face. What else is over here? Well, when Joel was growing up, he was also told to wash the hands. Wash the hands. As he's grown older and more mature, he's come to see the wisdom in washing the hands. After using the bathroom, he always washes a pair of human hands, so he keeps two man's hands in the sink for washing. The word mano, with a stress on man, means hand. Now note that this word mano is feminine, even though it ends with the letter O. So you would say las manos, just as you would say la cara or la cabeza. Also notice that Joel isn't saying wash my hands or wash your hands. Instead, he's saying wash the hands. This is because Joel has high respect for body parts. As such, he usually glorifies them with the word the. For example, don't touch the wings, or be careful with the hands. It's rare to hear a Spanish speaker say your hands or my hands. Instead, it's almost always the hands. For example, to say, you have to be careful with the hands, or there's a need to be careful with the hands, you would say, hay que tener cuidado con las manos. You have to have control of your head would be, hay que tener control de la cabeza. Now there's an idiom using hands. The idiom, give me a hand, is equivalent between Spanish and English. For example, someone's going to have to give me a hand with that. Alguien va a tener que darme una mano con eso. The man's hands in the sink on the left side of the bathroom seem to be bleeding. They're pouring out a grayish substance with the consistency of sand. Joel concludes that all blood probably looks like this gray sand, and so he refers to blood as sangre. So it sounds like sand gray, sangre. On the right side of the room, we have Joel's shower and his bathtub. Nowadays, Joel always takes showers instead of baths because the bathtub has a body in it. Joel doesn't know where this body came from, or at least he doesn't remember, but he doesn't want to call anybody in to remove it because if the police come to his house, they might suspect him of crimes that he may or may not have committed. Meanwhile, Joel calls this body a corpse, or as he puts it, a cuerpo. The word cuerpo means body, whether the person is alive or dead. The body in the bathtub pretty much looks like a skeleton at this point, but it still seems to have a heart. Although this interesting heart is bright and shiny like the sun. Whenever Joel thinks about someone's heart, he thinks of this body's heart, and he imagines that each person's heart looks like the sun. His word for heart is corazón. Now let's turn our attention to what's floating above the bathtub. A giant, ghostly, apple-shaped head appears next to the shower whenever Joel is bathing. It floats there, staring angrily at him until he finishes, and then it vanishes. The word ser, as a noun, means being. For example, to say my being, Joel would say mi ser. This can also be used to talk about other beings. For example, a strange being would be un ser extraño. While showering, Joel uses weeds to clean out the insides of his ears. Since he gets pieces of the weeds stuck in his ears, he calls his ears his oídos, with a stress on weed. Meanwhile, he washes his eyes with two O-shaped hoses in the shower, which are specially designed for bees' eyes. He refers to his eyes as his ojos. That's all the nouns for this week. Before moving on, make sure that you've mastered where all the nouns are in Joel's house. What rooms are they all in? Which are on the right and which are on the left? Once you're confident with this, move on to the flashcards, writing assignment, and audio quizzes. We are near the end of Volume 2, or the basic fluency portion of this course. That means that right now, you need to focus on becoming keenly aware of your own weaknesses. Nouns aren't terribly difficult to integrate into your vocabulary in general, but you want to make sure that you're focused on the most tricky uses of all of your new nouns.